Hello everyone, Helen here. How are you today? I do hope you're okay, and thank you very much for coming to join me. And I'm chatting to you from my craft room today, and I look forward to taking you off on a camper van trip that we've just been on, and very soon. But for today, I'm going to tell you about my first experiences of tatting. So if you watched last week's podcast, you'll have seen that I went away with my mum, and we did lots of crafting while we were away. And the thing I didn't show you was my mum tatting and showing me how to do that. So I've got that to show you. I've got one of my old books that I showed in a previous podcast to read a little bit from that. And then we're just going to go on a little trip out to somewhere that had a 1940s event that was quite interesting to go and see those things. I thought you'd like to see that as well. So we are definitely stepping back in time a bit today. And in fact, so starting off with tatting or something like it has been around for a very long time. And if you don't know what it is, I would describe it as kind of micro macrame. So basically it's knotting, but whereas in macrame you use thickish string or macrame cord or whatever, for tatting you use fine crochet cotton. And so it's very, very tiny. And so that's what it is. But originally its kind of predecessor was called knotting, and it's been found that the ancient Egyptians used a decorative knotting for their ceremonial dress, and in early China they used decorative knotting as well. And the English writer Chaucer, who wrote the Canterbury Tales, actually mentioned it in that was in the 1300s that he published that. So something like it has been around for a long time. And it didn't really become popular in Europe or the West, I suppose, until about the 17th century. Nobody's quite sure where it changed from being knotting to tatting. But it's thought in the first place that the Dutch brought back a new form of knotting from China, from their explorations there. And that possibly it became tatting in Italy, but nobody's really very sure about that. Certainly in England in the 17th century, when William and Mary were on the throne, just at the end of the 1600s, beginning of the 1700s, Queen Mary was very, very fond of the craft of tatting. And in fact, all of the wealthy ladies at the time would carry about a little drawstring bag, usually very decorated, and it would have their tatting things in, their little shuttle in there, and the thread and everything. And it was really very acceptable to take these little bags to out to parties and the theatre. And it was just okay to get your craft out now. And whereas today it's a bit different, isn't it? If you did get your knitting out in the theatre, people might be a little bit, but no, with your tatting, it was fine. And I also learnt that lots of the lots of the wealthy ladies, when they had their portrait painted, they would actually be painted with their little drawstring bag and in one hand and their tatting shuttle in the other hand. And if you don't know what one looks like, I'm going to show you shortly. Absolutely fascinating. So I learnt these things from a book that my mum took away with us on holiday. And so the history of it is very interesting. She actually says it's not a very good book for trying to learn tatting from. It's not so clear, although she did learn from a book, but not this one. And she learned many, many years ago. She's been tatting for a long time. And she's found it in the years where she was doing quite a lot of air travel, that it was the perfect project to take away with her on an aeroplane, because unlike knitting needles and crochet hooks, which not all airlines will allow you to have in your hand luggage, nobody ever objected to a little tatting shuttle, so that was really useful, and it's nice and small, compact project as well. So yes, so what I'm going to show you now is a little video I've made of my mum, first of all showing all of her different tatting shuttles and little bits of tatting that she's done, and then a little bit of a sequence of her trying to teach me to tat. So I was a complete beginner, and it was a bit baffling at times. She kept saying, and then you hear the click, and I wasn't really getting what that meant at all. I did eventually start to realise what it was, but anyway, hopefully you will enjoy watching this little video.
This is a very straightforward shuttle, and this is work done just with one shuttle, one thread. That's the simplest version of tatting. This shuttle is slightly different and it's very easy. It's the easiest one to fill because it's got a little point on, but it's got a recess there. And this item here is an edging for any handkerchief or a towel or whatever. And this is made with the shuttle and the ball of cotton. This shuttle is completely different because it has a removable bobbin that you wind the cotton on first and then you press it into there. It hasn't got an open end at all, but in one end it's got a hook. And this saves you having to use a crochet hook if you're joining up picots.
Can't focus on it.
And
let me just go down there.
This is the start of making a delphinium. There. This item here, which is representing just a flower, which I'm putting a green stem on, and will eventually make some leaves as well, is made with two shuttles. This shuttle is the same as the one I've just shown you with the bobbin in, and this one is a bone one. A little bit difficult to wind the cotton on, but I love it. It's one of my favourites. This one here is slightly different again, and it's one of the original type shuttles with pointy both ends, plenty of space for putting the cotton on, and it's made by Millward. This is just very similar to the yellow one that I showed you before, and it's got a nice firm holding place on it. So that's all the different kinds of shuttles I've got. Round your left hand, you wrap the thread round all the four fingers, and then you hold that very firmly with your thumb and forefinger. You have about that length to start working with, and you go under and through, and then you take this and you feel a click, and that's the first half of your stitch. Hold it once you've done it, and then you go over. You loosen your fingers while you're doing this. Go over and through and pull again until you feel the click, and then you pull it firmly. That's one stitch. Two movements, one stitch. The important thing to know is that you're making the circle. You're making the stitches with what's round your finger, not what's in your shuttle. And you should be able to pull and move that like that. Completed circle, so we've just got to close it up now. So hold that firmly, we'll pull on the shuttle thread, pull until it's completely closed, and that's your circle.
Yeah, so will it become a new hobby of mine? I'm not sure about that, but I would like to have another go and actually make a bit more than the tiny thing that I made. So yeah, we shall see. And actually, I must show you this funny bit of video that the day after my mum had shown all of those shuttles, she just casually popped them back in the bag that they'd come in, and well, when she took them out again, what a muddle they were in. I don't know how they'd got into such a muddle. She'd only put them in and then took them out, but oh dear me, we did laugh about that. And she did manage to get it all untangled. She quite likes untangling things anyway. So yes. So next I am going to read you a little bit of a story actually. So quite a few weeks ago, I showed you a book that I'd bought in a second-hand bookshop when we were on our out and about somewhere in the camper van. Can't remember where I bought it, but anyway, so it was this little old book called Table Talks and Table Travels, and I read a little bit from it. It's a book, oh by the way, that was published around about 1900, so it's well over 100 years old. A book for children, just to teach them about how the common things at their breakfast table were made. And so one of the things in here is how the table was made. I read you a little bit of that, and one or two people in the comments on that occasion said, "Oh, I'd love to hear a bit more of that book." So you might regret asking now. Anyway, so I decided to read the story about how linen is made, and it actually it's ended up being longer than I really intended it. So honestly, I hope it's not too boring, because there's not lots of pictures either. And also I haven't quite got the camera lined up some of the time, so you can't even read all the words. I haven't read the whole thing, but I've just taken excerpts out. So anyway, I hope you might enjoy learning about how linen is made, or how it was described to children in 1900. The tablecloth story. Most of you children know that the tablecloth is made of linen. Did you know that linen is made from a plant called the flax plant? A long time ago, people used to make their own tablecloths. They grew the flax, made it into thread, and wove it into cloth. There were no weaving machines then, so they had to weave by hand. We do not grow flax and make linen in our homes now. The land is needed for growing corn and feeding cattle. You will see later why it is easier for the farmer to grow corn than flax. A great deal of flax comes from a land called Russia. Indeed, half the flax in all the world comes from there. The flax field. When the farmer sows his flax seed, he chooses a day when there is no wind blowing. The flax seed is called linseed. You have all heard of linseed, I am sure. The seeds are sown very thick. Then a harrow is dragged over the ground. This covers the seeds over with soil. Birds are very fond of linseed and would soon rob the farmer of all his crop if he let them. He cannot save all his seeds. The birds get a good feed, but he hides the rest away as fast as he can. The field is then rolled. This is to press the soil. When the seeds send out their tiny root fingers, they can feel the earth close all round. Sometimes the flax seeds are not very clean and have other seeds among them. Then weeds grow up with the flax. They eat the food which the young flax plants should have, so they have to be pulled up. The flax plant. Here is a flax plant. Don't you think it is very pretty? See its slender stalk, how straight it stands. The little leaves grow out of the stem one after the other. They are shaped like a spear and have a white bloom on them. Just under the outside of the stem there are bundles of long threads. In each bundle there are 20 or 30 fine threads. Here is a stem cut open and made to look bigger to show you the threads. These are the threads of which linen is made. The flax plant has a pretty pale blue flower. There are 5 dainty petals. There is a little seed house which has 10 tiny rooms. 5 fairy ones grow out of the seed house. Can you see them? When flower dust falls on the knobs of these ones, a wonderful thing happens. A baby seed begins to grow in every one of the 10 rooms. The pretty blue flowers invite the bees and other insects to pay them a visit. The bees bring a present of flower dust for the fairy ones. Have you seen flax seeds? You all know what linseed looks like, and that is the same thing. The seeds are flat and oval. They have shiny brown coats and are slippery. There is a good deal of oil in flax seeds. You've all heard of linseed oil. The painter knows it well. He uses it to make his paints and varnish. I wonder who had a cold last winter. Did you have linseed tea? Isn't it slimy stuff? But it is good for coughs and colds. The flax harvest. The flax must be gathered before it is too ripe. The farmer wants dry weather for his harvest. He cannot use a reaping machine for his flax, for it has to all be pulled up. The pullers take hold of a handful of stems just under the seed boxes. They give a good jerk, and the plants come out, root and all. The pullers try to get the stems of one length together. They lay them out on the field in handfuls. Each handful is laid across the other to keep it separate. You have heard how useful flax seeds are, so, as they are of no use in making linen, they are pulled off. A large iron comb is fastened to a big plank. Its teeth are 1/2 yard long. The men spread a sheet under the comb to catch the seeds as they come off. The next thing to be done is to get the threads away from the rest of the stalk. A small pond is dug and filled with water. I will tell you why the stems are soaked in water. There is some gummy stuff in the flax which fastens the threads to the rest of the stem. The water in the pond loosens the gum. In about 2 weeks the flax sees the daylight once again. The handfuls are taken out and laid on a slope so that all the water can drain off. After that they are carried to a field and laid out in rows on the grass. In a day or 2 the threads get shorter and the rest of the stem bends. The stems are then put between rollers. This breaks the wood of the stems away, making thread. We have been calling the stringy part of the flax stem thread. Have you been thinking of the thread which is on the reel in your mother's sewing basket? The flax has still much more to go through before it becomes thread like that, so until it is ready we will call it fibre. The fibres are cut into even lengths, then they are drawn through one comb after another. Each comb is finer than the one before it. This makes the fibres very, very fine. Now the flax is ready for spinning into thread. A long time ago, people used to draw out the fibres and twist them into thread by hand. Look at this picture. Do you see the bundle of fibres on the bunch stick? See how the spinner is drawing out the thread. The little spindle at the bottom of the picture turns round and round. This twists the thread. Flax thread is a pale yellow at first. Before it becomes as white as the tablecloth, it has to be bleached. The flax is washed and laid out in the fields for the sun and air to dry it. When the threads are bleached, they have to be made stiff. This is so that they will weave well. Weaving the cloth. The machine which weaves the thread into cloth is called a loom. Long threads wind off a wooden roller. These are the threads that go down the cloth. Instead of a needle to go across, under and over, there is a shuttle full of thread. The shuttle does not pick its way across in and out as the darning needle goes. All the threads which the shuttle must go under are lifted up at once. The shuttle flies across with a jerk and leaves a thread behind it. Then the threads which the shuttle went over are lifted up and the shuttle flies back under them. Up and down the long threads go, and the shuttle flies across merrily from one side to the other. The weaver's work is to see that there is always thread in the shuttle. If any of the long threads break, they must join the ends. Have you ever been inside a weaving shed? You should hear what a noise the looms make. There is such a noise that you cannot hear your own voice. The weavers do not mind that. They speak to each other without any voices. They just watch each other's mouths and talk with their lips. The weaving shed is a busy place. The engine thinks so as it drives hundreds of looms at once. Well, if you're still awake after that, you might like to just come on a very short visit that I made to a local place of interest, Usher Historic House and Gardens, and they were holding a 1940s event over one weekend recently. And I've just put together a few of the things that caught my eye, that interested me, and I hope you might enjoy coming and having a little look, a little step back in time to the 1940s. Okay, then that's it for today, and I thank you so much for spending your time with me if you've made it this far. And I'll be back again very soon. So until then, take good care of yourself, keep nice and busy, and I'll see you soon. Okay then, bye.